All right, as we know, Daniel is with his three friends in exile. And so the theme is how to live as foreigners or exiles in a foreign land. Because in many ways, we talk about foreigners coming or immigrants coming. Do you feel like a foreigner sometimes on this earth? Like we're of another world? Well, we should, because our citizenship is in heaven. And the more and more we grow like Christ, the more and more we groan to be adopted into heaven. And we want to be there because just like our spirits are troubled on this earth when we see what's going on. And so the more we're troubled, the more we want to leave. But we're looking at Daniel and his friends because they were able to be faithful in exile, in a godless, corrupt, idolatrous nation. And so we have to dare to be like Daniel in many ways because Daniel spoke up. Remember in chapter 1, I'm not going to eat their food. But he was reasonable how he did it, and God blessed him in that. In Daniel chapter 2, we saw the statue, remember? Okay? And we learned that God's in control of the nations. And in the last days, he's going to set up his own kingdom, which will never be destroyed. But who is the head of gold? Okay, and that's who's reigning now, the kingdom of Babylon. But Nebuchadnezzar has died, because when we look at this, we're going to have a wake-up call. Now, if you go to a hotel and you got to get up really early in the morning, you can call the front desk and say, I need a wake-up call at 4 o'clock. That's an ungodly time, right? And then you're just sound asleep and ding, like, oh, man, I got to get up. But this word wake-up call can be used also metaphorically for things that happen in your life. Man, that was a wake-up call. And so, and the United States has had a lot of them. Think about this. The Titanic, it's not United States. The engineer said, God can't even sink this ship. Do you remember that? Yeah. Well, that's a wake-up call. You're not in charge of just things in the ocean and icebergs. How about the stock market crash in 29? I mean, that's called the roaring 20s, right? Everything was great financially and the stock market shooting up. And just in one day, that Black Tuesday, boom, it was so bad people jumped out of skyscrapers to commit suicide. Boy, can you trust in your money and all those things? No, it could be gone just like that. How about Pearl Harbor? Was that a wake-up call? Until that time, the United States has been out of the war and never attacked. Not going all the way back to, the revolution. I'm disregarding that. But what brought us into the war on both continents, Europe and Asia? The attack on Pearl Harbor. Oh, we're safe. No. Is that a wake-up call? It certainly was. How about 9/11? How is that different than Pearl Harbor? Okay, Hawaii is part of the United States, but, it's Hawaii. This was the homeland. This was in New York, right? That's a direct, and people got in and used our own planes to kill our own people. Was that a wake-up call? Well, everything changed. You can't fly the same way anymore. TSA all became out of this, didn't it? All the security lines, okay? And so we can go on and talk about, was there a wake-up call a long, long time ago? We call it the flood. Why did God destroy the earth by water? Just so evil, all right? Did people learn from that long term? No. They just forget. Just like 2001, 9/11, it's so far in the rear view mirror. A lot of the kids were never even alive when that happened, and we don't remember. Heather. Well, it should have been for the generations to follow, as a sign. Good point. Because Peter's going to use that coming up. Well, when we're looking at Daniel, like living for God is the theme in this secular world. The first 6 chapters, who's in charge? God is, all right? Of the present. But the next section, when we get there, it's more difficult and challenging. God's also in charge of the future. And so Daniel's going to have a lot of prophetic things about what's going to happen forward from his day, not our day, but from his day, okay? So we'll get there later, but we're finishing this first thing. So look with me in Daniel chapter 5, verse 5. It's kind of the key verse. There's this big party, and suddenly the fingers of a man's hand appears on the wall. Not his arm, just his hand. You can see the back of the hand, and it's writing on the wall, the plaster of the king's wall. And the king saw the back of the hand that did the writing. It just stops the party cold turkey, okay? That's where we get this idea, the handwriting on the wall. It's a wake-up call. In this case, it's going to be too late. We're going to see there was this lewd party going on. There was this sudden interruption. God interrupted it. We're going to see there's panic, and then there's a wise prophet named Daniel who's going to interpret the writing and with his weighty message of judgment. So those are the things we're going to look at. But in this, we're going to see God's in charge. And we just have to trust him in his time. Things will be taken care of in his time. Yeah.
That term, handwriting on the wall, so many people use it, they don't even know what to
Exactly. They don't know where it comes from. But when it's symbolic of the handwriting on the wall. Oh, it's over, it's done. The handwriting's on the wall. It's too late. And that comes from this account right here. So let's look at it in verse 1, okay? So we're in chapter 5, verse 1. We have this guy named Belshazzar. Now, we're going to stop right there, but I'll read the whole verse. Verse 1, Belshazzar the king held a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles, and he was drinking wine in the presence of the 1,000. And when Belshazzar tasted the wine, he gave orders to bring the gold and silver vessels, which Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem, so that his kings and his nobles and his wives, plural, and his concubines could drink from them. What? The golden vessels, the holy vessels out of the temple from Israel, right? They drank, verse 4, the wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze and iron and wood stone. Here's this party. Now let's talk about it. First of all, we got to talk about Belshazzar, okay? While this is going on, this is about October 11th, 539 BC. We know historically. What did I do wrong?
No, I didn't know that they had it at October 11th.
Oh, well, and I don't know how they nailed it down. The Medes and the Persians have surrounded the city of Babylon, and they're going to take over the city. And here the king says, I'm going to throw a party. Why would he throw a party at a time like this? And who is this Belshazzar, all right? Because for the longest time, critics would say, see, the Bible's wrong again. It mentions this guy being the king of Babylon. There's no historical evidence for a guy named Belshazzar. And so you guys cannot believe in the Bible because it's not historically reliable. We've heard that about other things, all right? But lo and behold, what happens? We have the kings of Babylon given to us. Not all was in the book of Daniel, but we do Nebuchadnezzar. And then we have this guy Nabonidus. See the last one? He's not named in the Bible. Well, how do we know they exist? Because there was a cylinder discovered in southern Iraq in 1854. Now, it's not very big. It's like this, right? It's in the British Museum right now. And it's written in their language, and it describes some of the wars, but the kings that ruled over Babylon, and guess who's mentioned? Belshazzar. He's the oldest son of Nabonidus. And so now we know the Bible is what? It was accurate. So it's interesting. It's been Nebuchadnezzar, that's chapter 4. Now we're jumping to the end of the Babylonian reign, and the last king, this guy right here. So we're skipping all the period of those kings in between that I had listed, because that's not significant to the story. God's going to try to show us how it all ended. Yes?
I was going to say, it's interesting because this is the end, but he's going to go back, and he's going to have visions during
Yes.
the reign of Belshazzar. So
Yes.
I was a little confused by that,
Yes.
and I'm probably getting ahead.
No, that's fine, because he can go back and talk about what things happen in between, but he's looking at the end, right?
Is it the language of the Persians that is going to be the writing?
On the wall?
Yeah.
You are ahead, but that's a good question. They don't know what it was written in. We just know how it was written down by Daniel for our benefit. He interpreted, but we don't know what he was reading. It was Aramaic or Persian. They do not know. This is a great question, but they don't know. But it's written for us in his language, right? All right, so we know this guy existed. Now, what's interesting, this guy reigned for, I don't remember how many years, like 17 years, something like that. Don't hold me to that. But he was out of town most of the time, so he named his son Belshazzar as co-regent. So who's the king? This guy named Nabonidus, if that's how you pronounce it. But he lets his son rule in his place while he's out there doing his thing, right? Now that's important in our story here, and I'll show you in just a little bit. First in charge is who? Nabonidus. Who's second in charge? Belshazzar. Now he's throwing a party. Now why is he throwing a party? Okay, he had a great feast. The best thing that says Jess is like, wait a second. Our people are kind of down because we're surrounded by all these armies. We need to motivate them, get them all excited, and let them know, hey, everything's okay. How do you show everyone everything's okay to everybody? Have a party. There's nothing to worry about. Yes, Clinton.
Well, see, the Medes and the Persians went up there and they diverted the Euphrates.
Oh, you're getting ahead of me. Hold that, and I'll come back to you, okay? Will you? Remember that. That's really good knowledge.
I'm confused too because Daniel's other name is Belteshazzar.
Yeah, it's a different name. But Bel is the god they were worshiping, you know. It was after that. All right, so here he's having this feast, and during the feast, he's got his concubines. Do you get the idea this is a very debauchery, you know, a feast with a lot of immorality going on and drunkenness? And when they've done that, hey, you know, let's go bring those gold and silver cups from the temple that Nebuchadnezzar brought. Let's drink out of them. It's almost like in your face, God, right? We're better. Our gods are stronger and better than you because we're going to drink out of your cups in our party. Those are sanctified things, right? To be used for the temple worship only. So why would they do that? Of course, that happened in 2 Chronicles chapter 36. We find that. So here's some of the reason. Because when you look at artist descriptions and from what we read in historical documents, here's what we learn about the city of Babylon. First of all, there was 14 miles square. Pretty big, right? It had two sets of wall. The outer walls were 17 miles long. These walls were 22 feet thick. Could you ride a chariot on top of it? Yes. And they were 90 feet high. Are you going to be able to scale that with your ladders? 90 feet. That's one wall. Then there's another inner wall, right? So the outer walls had 250 watchtowers, another 100 feet high. The cities had 150 gates that were made of bronze. And if you know anything about bronze, is that easy to break through, Clinton? No. It's not like wood where you can burn it down, right?
It's a mixture of lead and copper.
All right, good. So they had a system of inner and outer walls and moats that were 30 feet wide. So the city is secure. In the last line, they had stockpiled how many years of provisions in case they were being sieged around? That means water, food. And so you can try to surround us, but you're not going to starve us out. Because that's how they conquered cities. They starved them. That's how Jerusalem fell in 70 AD. They surrounded them and starved them out. So he said, let's have a party. These guys are just going to get bored out there because no one can take us. We're unsinkable. Pride and arrogance. At least Nebuchadnezzar learned his lesson, didn't he? Because he was sitting on the porch of his palace looking at this kingdom, said, look at what my hands have made, and he became what immediately? Like a beast of the field until he recognized the Most High God is in charge. And he establishes governments, and he puts people in charge, and he takes them out. And he became a believer in what? In God. Now, this is his great-grandson. He didn't get it. Boy, we're just a generation away from apostasy. Maybe our kids will believe, but our grandchildren, we don't know what's going to happen. And here's what's happening. So let's go back. Now you have the other idea. So they drank the wine and they praised the gods. On your little handout, I hadn't mentioned that what kind of gods they, do you see that, the fill in the blank part? Don't look for names, but here it mentions material. Why not names, but materials? What's the point? Yeah.
The works of man.
Huh?
They're praising the works of man.
Okay, that's the point. Because we could put the names of their gods they worship, but I think Daniel's trying to show these were gods of gold, just crafted by man out of gold, out of silver, bronze, iron, wood. These were handmade gods. Are they really gods? And that's what he's trying to show. Forget the names. These were man-made out of the figment of your imagination. And they're worshiping them and praising their gods for their glory and the great city and the protection that their gods is giving them. Well, we're going to see how that turns out, right? Does that sound like America a lot today? They don't recognize the true and living God, and they put their protection. Boy, every time I hear a candidate say, or a politician say, we are the greatest country that has ever existed on this earth. How many times you've heard that? And you might argue about it like this, man, just the arrogance of you saying that. Watch out. Because are we the greatest? I don't know that for first of all, because there's been a lot of nations that we're not even aware of what they did. But we are the greatest country that's ever lived on this earth. Okay, even if that's true, you better be thanking God rather than just boasting yourself. There's a lot of pride there, isn't there? And every time I hear that, I wince. You know, like, uh-oh. Because when the handwriting on the wall comes, it's too late. It's over. So here's what happens. So suddenly, during this party, and they're drunk and they're praising their gods of wood, silver, bronze, iron, and gold, the fingers of a man's hand emerged and writes on the wall. Now, the king is going to be startled, obviously, because he didn't know what the things say, but probably what scares him the most is to see a hand appear, like just on this wall, a real hand, and starts writing. You see the things, you know, the words after he's done. So you know you're not dreaming. Everyone sees it with him. And this is the mighty, mighty king, right? And so when the king's face grew pale, his thoughts alarmed him. His hips joints went slack, and his knees began to what? Knocking. This guy's in a full-fledged panic. And that's what God can do, to people that defy him. He can turn them into cowards just like that. Because this guy is boasting and so proud. Hey, let's have a party. No one can take us down. Notice this one writer said, our conscience is able to make cowards of us all if you're not walking right with the Lord. Isn't that true? The only reason you have to panic and to be worried and fear is when you're not on God's side. And you're not giving him the glory and honor. And that's, of course, the case of this guy. All right? So the king, he calls out to bring in all the conjurers, the Chaldeans and diviners, and the king spoke and said to the wise men of Babylon, wait, have we heard this story before? When was it? Okay, his grandfather, exactly. His dream of the golden statue, he called in all the same people, and they said, tell you what, king, you tell us what the dream was, and we'll tell you what it meant. And he goes, no, I'm not playing your game. You tell me what I dreamed, then I'll know you can know the interpretation. I said, well, we can't do that. Now, this one's different because they all see the handwriting on the wall.
But they don't understand it.
But they can't answer it. They can read it, look at it, be like, I don't know what it means. Yeah? They still got him. That's right. So here's his promise. It's very similar to them because any man who can read the inscription and explain it to me, that's all he wants. I want to know what it's saying. What's the message from the gods that they're trying to tell me? He'll be clothed with purple. What's the significance of that? Royalty. Have a necklace of gold around his neck, and he'll have authority as what? Well, why third?
Because he was second.
There. We have his daddy who's out running around sowing his wild oats, his number 1. Belshazzar's number 2. So this guy is going to be what? 3rd in charge. That's why. See, it all historically lines up with what we know. Why it's 3rd, huh? That's right. Because 3rd over nothing is what? Nothing. You're the ruler over nothing. And that's what's going to happen. All right? And so I think it's very interesting, all these things. So verse 8, we can just go through this kind of quickly. The king's wise men came in. They could not read the inscription or make known its interpretation to the king. So King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed, and his face grew even paler, and his nobles were perplexed. So who enters verse 10 now? The queen. Now, I'll go to that chart because as we understand, this is probably the wife of Nabonidus. She's the queen because she stayed behind, right? And she says, hey, cool it, calm down. Well, what is she going to say? You guys are going to remember all this. O king, verse 10 in the middle, live forever. Don't let your thoughts alarm you, nor your face be pale. Have you ever looked at a person and they say, boy, you look like you just saw a ghost. You're just white. That's what this guy looks like. He's pale in the face. Verse 11, the queen. There's a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. Is she accurate in that? Who said no?
Spirit of the holy gods?
She should have dropped the plural and left it of the holy God.
But does it...
She got it right, but she got it wrong. Well, yeah. But she's still thinking there's multiple gods, but she knows Daniel has the Spirit of God. All right? And in the days of your father, now father who actually is grandfather, but they didn't have a word for grandfathers. Understand, when they referred to father, that means your what? Your ancestors. That's right. In the days of your father, illumination, insight, and wisdom, like in the wisdom of gods, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, appointed him chief of magicians, conjurers, Chaldeans, and diviners. This was because an extraordinary spirit, knowledge, and insight, interpretation of dreams, explanation of enigmas, solving of difficult problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named, here it is, Belteshazzar. Did this Daniel do a lot of jobs? Did he serve the king well? He explained lots of things beyond that dream. This guy's got a solid reputation, and where does it come from? Because remember to Nebuchadnezzar, I can't do this, but God will do it through me, right? She knows this guy, and he's got a reputation. So the end of verse 12 now. So now let Daniel be summoned, and he will declare the interpretation. 13. So Daniel was brought in before the king, and the king spoke and said to Daniel, are you the Daniel who's one of the exiles from Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah? Verse 14. Now I've heard about you. That's important. He's going to repeat that in verse 16. I personally have heard about you. Does Daniel have a reputation? I guess he just forgot who he was. He had to be reminded, here is a guy who can do this. But let me just ask that of us. Should we have a reputation? I've heard about you. I've heard about you Christians. I heard about you people that serve Jesus Christ. We should. So in time of trouble, who will they come see? You and me. If not, something's wrong, right? But the times of panic and real trauma, they're going to seek a man of God. So, verse 16, I personally have heard about you. You're able to give interpretation and solve difficult problems. Now, if you're able to read the inscription and make its interpretation known to me, you're going to be clothed with purple, wear a necklace of gold and around your neck, and you will have authority as third ruler in the kingdom. He repeats the promise, right? Now, Daniel comes back very concisely and blunt. And you got to love that. First of all, it says, keep your gifts for yourself. Can you buy off a man of God? Or can you reward him for? No. Or give your rewards to someone else. So he gets rid of that, right? I'm not for a hire. I'm not here for your glory or anything. But I will read the inscription to the king and make known the interpretation known to him. Now, my understanding, the reason he's going to do that is because this comes from who? The hand of God. And God can't give his message to Belshazzar unless Daniel tells him what God is saying. This is a message of judgment, so he has to do it. He's a prophet, right? Verse 18. O king. And this is a very frequent reference to our God, the Most High God. Why is he called the Most High God?
That'll do it all the rest.
There's no one higher, exactly. Not that the other gods are gods at all, but they believed in multiple gods, didn't they? So he's always presented as there's the God of the Lord of hosts, of all of them. And it's the Most High God. He's granted sovereignty. What's that? That's authority to rule. Grandeur, glory, and majesty to who? So he starts there. So that's how Nebuchadnezzar became king of Babylon and took us into captivity. Because of the grandeur which he bestowed on him, all the peoples and nations and men of every language feared and trembled before him. That's Nebuchadnezzar. Whoever he wished he killed, and whoever he wished he spared alive, and whomever he wished he elevated, and whoever he wished he humbled. This guy was sovereign. He was in charge of everyone, and it went to his head, didn't it? Verse 20. When his heart was lifted up and his spirit became so proud that he behaved arrogantly, he was disposed from his royal throne and his glory is taken away from him. What's that a reference to? When he became a beast of the field. They knew this story. They told this story. It was rich in their history. And the queen knew all about it. And he's just repeating what they all knew. Now, Daniel's 70, 80 years old now. How old was he when he came first? Just a young man. Maybe 17, maybe early 20s. We don't know. But he's an old man now. But everyone knows this history. But it doesn't matter if the history's there if we don't live it. It's just history, right? Heather, were you going to say something? All right. Verse 21, he was driven away from mankind. His heart was made like that of the beast, and his dwelling place was with the wild donkeys. He was given grass to eat like cattle, and his body was drenched with the dew of heaven until he recognized the Most High God is ruler over the realm of mankind. Who does that exclude? No one. And that it's he sets over it whomever he wishes. That's mankind. There will not be a king, a judge, or a governor, or anyone that will be in charge of anybody unless God allows it to happen. He puts them in charge, and when they're not being the servant that he wishes, he'll take them out of place, right? He'll take them out. Verse 22. Yet you, his son, Belshazzar, have not, there's 5 sins here. I want you to pick them out. Okay, let's get ahead of it. You pick them out for me. Because I'll get it all the way. I read through all this, all right?
We're at 22.
Okay. What's the first sin you can read? I'm right there. Well, here's the lessons. Those are 2 things. What's the first one? That's right. The very first charge that he makes against him is that you've not humbled yourself. What does God hate? Yeah. 1 Peter and James says God is opposed to the proud. The word opposed means he actually fights against you. Who's going to win that battle? You don't have a chance. But when he sees someone that's proud and arrogant and think they're all that and they're in charge, he says, I will work against you and you're going down. But what does he do to the humble? He exalts them. Just the opposite. I'm going to tear you down, but the humble he'll exalt and lift up. So which you want to be, arrogant or humble? Boy, God hates arrogance. Because how can you stand before God and have any pride? We just would fall on our face. We should. Heather.
There's a verse I was just reading it, I think this morning, wherever it is, in one of my notebooks, but it says, you can Google it, as for the proud, his soul is not right in him.
that's a good one. And they're haughty before God. Yeah, we see that in Proverbs. Yes.
You know, 22 makes it a little bit, not a little bit, like we are today. Because you could say that whoever reads the Bible has the same knowledge what he was just repeating, you know, from 19, from what he said his grandfather did. So in other words, we have knowledge of what's taking place, and
Well said.
we're just
Did you hear what he said? We have the same knowledge. What's the second sin or charge of sin here? I have it out or highlighted. The first one is you're humble or arrogant. You knew. And that's what people do. They ignore the knowledge that we have. That's what you're saying. Do we have a rich history of Christian tradition about who God and Jesus is and what's right and wrong? In fact, I heard just last week there are more people in the Senate that are ordained ministers than there's been in a long time, or in the Congress, right? But is that doing us any good? Because you can know, but if you ignore this rich history in the Bible, is it going to do you any good? No, we become so arrogant and puffed up, we don't need God. We can work it out ourselves. Elect us and we'll fix your problems. No, fall on your face before God. He will fix our problems. It's the only one that can. Yes? Oh, yeah, exactly. It means nothing. It means nothing. You go online, she said. You can. That's right.
I read ahead today in chapter 9
Good.
where Daniel's prayer
Yeah.
about it's
That's a
the United States.
beautiful prayer, that prayer of confession of sin. Read that. He said it's United States today. It is.
And I'm sorry, I don't like to be lying ever, so I looked it up. It's Habakkuk 2:4.
Yeah,
Behold, as for the proud one, his soul is not right within him.
that's good. Habakkuk 2:4. What's the third sin? They ignored knowledge. He did. And what? Because he knew it. He knew all of it. That's right. You didn't humble yourself, but you actually exalt yourself against God. Boy. And we can do that by any time we challenge God and we accuse God or we doubt God or ignore God.
It's interesting to me, Jack, how he forgot
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's either his mother or stepmother came and told him about Daniel. But God says, or Daniel says, you knew.
You knew. He did know. He knew. There's no excuses. And that's probably the worst thing when you stand before God and you know, and you knew, but you just ignored it. I think that'd be the worst thing to be in hell. It's like, it would be this. There's a lot of bad things about being in hell. But this one thought, I knew what I need to do not to be here. And I chose not to do it. That has to be the most tormenting thing. I don't have to be here. But I did it on my own because I chose to ignore what I knew to be true. That's got to be part of what makes hell hell. Does that make sense? It's got to be tormenting. Because you have no one to blame anymore. Because we like to blame everybody for all our problems, but when you're in hell, the only one you can blame is right. And that's got to be hellish, doesn't it? What's the third one? The fourth one? It's kind of more obscure, but that's right. Used it to worship idols with godly, utensils. What God has given to glorify him, you've used it to worship idols. And that's what we do with our bodies, with our money, and everything. People use it to worship other things other than God. And the last thing is what? They failed to what? Yeah. That's offensive to God. When you don't give him the glory that he deserves. The last one, you have not, but in the God in whose hand are your life, breath, and your ways. He's given you all this, but yet you didn't say thank you. You didn't honor him. But probably the most offensive thing to God is an ungrateful wretch. God has blessed us. He's graced us. He's given us life. He's given his son. And we don't have the humbleness or the gratitude to just say thank you and exalt him in our life. See how that would be offensive to God? Very much so. So, here is where he gets to the nitty-gritty. He lays out the charge. Verse 24, the hand was sent from who? From Jehovah, that's right. And the inscription written out. Now this is the inscription that was written out. Mene, mene, tekel upharsin. Now your Bible might say something different, and there's a lot of discussion about exactly what these words are and how they're supposed to be said. But verse 26, he tells us, the interpretation of the message is this. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and put an end to it. Now, mene comes from the word of mina. It's a sum of coin, but you count it out. It can mean to number, and that's what he says it means here. You've been numbered. Why would he repeat it twice? Okay. Have you ever counted your money? Like, let's count that again to make sure we have it right. You've been numbered twice. What does that mean, numbered? Well, next thing. Tekel, which means you've been weighed on the scales. And notice we have scales. And you've been found, my Bible says deficient. Your Bible might say wanting. In other words, when you're buying something and it weighs this much, how much gold you got to put on the scales? Enough to make it what? Even. But this is so lopsided. Here's what God's done for you, and you haven't done a thing. You look at your life. You've been weighed and counted, and you are so in debt and, wanting. And God's been patient and giving you time, but now it's time to pay up. Because that's the next thing when it says, Upharsin. He says, you're going to come to an end. Your kingdom, verse 28, has been divided and given over to the... Who's camped outside right now? They're surrounding it. Who's partying inside? This arrogant king thinks that I have nothing to worry about. So Belshazzar gave orders that they clothed Daniel with purple and put a necklace of gold around his neck and issued a proclamation concerning him that he now had authority as third ruler in the kingdom. But verse 30, that same night, the party's not even over. Well, it's ended now. Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed, slain. And Darius the Mede, historically this shows they conquered Babylon at this date, received the kingdom at about the age of 62. It's a historical fact that is recorded for us here. Now, how did he, what's the word I'm looking for? How did he infiltrate an impregnable city? Is that a good question? How did he conquer it that night? So now I'm coming back to what you said. What happened?
The Medes and the Persians were working on that before that happened. They diverted the Euphrates so they wouldn't, they couldn't get through the gates, and the gates were
Exactly.
unlocked. The bronze one.
All right.
Unlocked, so they could get in there.
So Darius,
200 years before that.
well, Darius Mede was looking. It said the river went right through the city. They actually dammed and diverted the river. So the water went down. They walked in on pretty much dry ground under the gates and walked in.
They had two gates.
Yeah, one was unlocked. They don't understand why.
The other one was unlocked.
It's just probably because of arrogance. But they walked in while they're partying and just took over the whole city just like that without a battle. Mene, mene, tekel upharsin. When you read the handwriting on the wall, it's over. You don't have any. It's done. It's too late. That's what it means, doesn't it? It's already done. You've been weighed and found wanting. It's over right now. That night, and they walk in while they're partying. Is that crazy? I mean, that's stuff you make movies about. But this is history, because the history is not recorded in Daniel of how they took it. That's given to us outside the Bible. Bible just says, yeah, Darius Mede took it. Why? Because God let him. God overthrew Babylon, didn't he?
That's almost like the border crossing.
Exactly. Yeah. So when is the United States time going to come? When we've been weighed and counted and weighed and found lacking. It's over. What will stop it from being over? Nothing. Now when will it happen? I don't know. But as long as there's sufficient enough for righteous people, the salt of the earth, ourselves, that keep praising God, he will spare this country because of us. not because of the politicians, not because of our wealth, not because of our war or military. He'll spare us because of people like you and me that are praising him. That's the only answer, really, that'll save this country. Clinton, go ahead.
Our cup of iniquity hasn't filled up.
That's right.
Like Abraham will not allow to take over the land he's at, but he said in 4 generations
That's right.
they'll come back. And about 470 years later they come back
Right.
and took over the kingdom.
We'll talk about that later. This cup of iniquity, God doesn't allow a nation to fall until their cup of sin is full. As long as it's not full, there's still time to repent. But when it gets full, it's over. And that's a phrase that's used in Revelation too. We'll talk about it. But Babylon's cup of iniquity was what? It was full.
It filled
Yes.
up less than 100 years.
Yeah. Didn't last long, did it?
Think, at least I'm thinking of history of other countries, all of them have gone that way.
Yep. You read the fall of Rome, it rotted internally from inside out, didn't it? Even though it lasted a long time. Yeah.
I get to a gathering of families on some Wednesdays every once in a while. And a few Wednesdays ago, they were talking about the iniquities of the German people, the relatives that we had, where they actually supported Hitler and did what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to be considered Christians.
Yeah.
So the cup of iniquity filled up.
It can very quickly. Let me make some comments and we'll wrap this up. So, basically, your days are numbered. You've been weighed, found deficient. Now your kingdoms will be given to another. That's the interpretation, right? So let's look at this here. Of course, he dies that very night. Of course, if there's headlines, let me look at this. Psalms 90 says, you know, we don't have much time on this earth. Maybe 70 years. Perhaps by due strength, 80. And the psalmist says, Lord, teach us to what? Number our days. I don't think number your days like how many you got left, but number your days, how are you living for the Lord? That's what's most important. We take this very, very seriously because when it's over, we're dead. You can't repent and change then. Today is the day of salvation. Teach us to number our days that we might present you a heart of wisdom. Revelation says this at the end. It's a picture of the end times. It said, I saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, kings and peasants, right? And books were open. There's books that are being opened, multiple books, which is the book of life, one other book that was open. And the dead were judged from the things that were written in the books according to their deeds. So that's when the weighing's going to take place. We need to number our days now because there will be a day when we're weighed by our deeds done in the flesh, good or bad, and we don't want to be found wanting or deficient. Because when you see the handwriting on the wall, then it's over.
Once we die,
It's too late. And so we think about this. He already knew, didn't he? And so do we. Of all people, we have no excuse because we talk about this all the time. We know what kind of lives we should live in faith. God will break pride, and if we don't have thoughtful, thankful worship because of God's blessing, we'll just become arrogant. So look, I'm going to add one more to this, a wake-up call. What do you think it should be? Because we'll end where we began. It's going to be the end of the world. All eyes are going to see him. Everyone will go, oh. But then it'll be what? Too late. So we have this text in Romans 13. Knowing the time, that it's already the hour for you to waken from sleep. For now salvation is nearer to us than when we first believed. The night is almost gone, the day is near. He says, wake up. Ephesians says this, awake sleeper, rise from the dead. That's spiritually awakened, right? Don't just get caught up in the world and think, wake up. And Christ will what? Isn't that beautiful? He'll shine on you. and we'll have the blessings that we seek so desperately anyway. Oh, that's our lesson of Daniel. Thank you very much. We'll be done right there. Thank Daniel and thank God for leaving it.